What does it say in the Talmud? The reason you see tons of videos all over the internet, what does the Talmud say, is because unlike any other religion, unlike the Gospels or any other religious text, the Talmud has been used for centuries as a way to weaponize something against the Jewish people, use our own sacred text and weaponize them against us, and they're misquoted to defame and attack the Jewish people. Now, the reason, again, you don't see this done with any other religious text is because when people say, oh, well, it says that in the Talmud, they often do it as a way to attack the Jewish people. So what does it actually say in the Talmud? The Talmud is a huge, vast body of Jewish literature spanning hundreds of years and is more than 1,700 years old. It has quotes all the way going from the times of before the modern era, before the cutoff of the year 0, before the times of Jesus, and it goes all the way into the year 400 with quotes from any number of rabbis. The Talmud has more than 5,000 pages in it and is filled with huge amounts of text and sayings. Now, why is that important? It's important because of all these many, many thousands of sayings that are in the Talmud. Occasionally, as you can imagine, with any text, there are some that could be either difficult to understand, difficult to apply, or that might be outright problematic and need to be dealt with and understood. And so what anti-Semites do is they, first of all, misquote. They'll take something from the Talmud and they'll misquote it or misapply it. Or people will, all over the internet, just outright just make things up. They'll be like, it says this and this in the Talmud, and then you look at it and there's no such a source. So first of all, if you want to understand the Talmud, I encourage you. It's one of the only religious texts that is so accessible. You can go on the website of sefaria.org. You can go on any website that has a translation of the Talmud. It's all there. There's no secret text. There's nothing sinister there. It's all very available. It's all translated. You can get it in any language. It's accessible in the age of Google Translate, AI. It's really, there are no secrets there because it's all out in the open. And when you go and you look at the Talmud, you will see mostly conversations that are not applicable to anyone who has no interest in Jewish law. In fact, if you have no interest in Jewish law, there's a chance you may be bored to death by it because it has nothing to do with anything other than Jewish law. Now, occasionally, since Jewish law has been practiced over so many continents, over so many centuries, therefore, it's not easy to find something that's going to be applicable in every society. And there are things, for example, the regulation of slavery, the regulation of marriage in situations that we don't do today, such as polygamy. There are statements about that in the Talmud. Doesn't mean that today, for example, on the issue of polygamy, Judaism does permit polygamy. No, it does not mean that. But what it means is that when the Talmud was written 1,600 years ago in Babylon, Iraq, that was practiced. And so the Talmud has conversations about those types of marriages. It doesn't mean that there's some Jewish conspiracy to enable polygamy. It just means that what life in Babylon 1,600 years ago was like. And so anti-Semites will go there and they'll quote it. And this is nothing new because we've seen it already. It's something we have seen in France already 900 years ago when the Pope had 24 carts filled of copies of the Talmud, 24 carts filled of books. In those days, before the printing press was centuries of work, he had it all burned because he falsely claimed that the Talmud said negative things about Christianity, etc. So, the bottom line is, if you see someone say, oh, I've seen it in the Talmud, first of all, chances are it's either made up or misquoted, or the person is cynically misquoting, or using it in the wrong context. Occasionally, there's probably 1 or 2 or 3 statements that are outright problematic. For example, I mentioned the example of when you deal with slavery, polygamy, etc., things like that, marriage is practiced differently in different societies. And so while certain things are discussed in the Talmud, it doesn't mean that that's the way Jews practice it, right? No Jews practice polygamy, even though it's something discussed in the Talmud. And so you have to understand that when something is discussed in the Talmud, that does not mean necessarily that Jews practice that. I gave the example of slavery, polygamy, and there are many, many other examples. So bottom line is, when someone who's not Jewish or with no interest in Jewish law suddenly tells you, oh, I've seen it in the Talmud, or it says in the Talmud this and that, chances are they have no clue what they're talking about. They're making it up, or they're misapplying it, or they're anti-Semitic and just trying to malign the Jewish people. The Talmud is a beautiful text. You can look at it. It's a very open source. It's out there on Sefaria and any other number of platforms. And if you do have a question about the Talmud, feel free to leave it here in the comments. I'll do my best to answer you. But the bottom line is, the Jewish people have always been peace-loving people, honest people, good people, and good citizens. So no matter what kind of text you find from 1600 years ago, that doesn't change anything about your Jewish neighbor, and it doesn't feed anything other than the fact that, that text does exist. Unfortunately, as the saying goes, the haters are going to hate. Those who try and misquote the Talmud will continue doing so, unfortunately. But it's for you, no matter if you're Jewish or not, to speak out against hate, to speak out against the maligning of our people, and to speak out against those who use the Talmud to falsely malign the Jewish people. Thank you so much for listening.